individuals would testify on behalf of Clinton. 2 women in the New York City borough of Queens have been arrested on charges they plan to set off bombs.
A criminal complaint says 28-year-old Noelle Valencias and 31-year-old Asia Siddiqui, both American citizens, investigated how to build homemade bombs with pressure cookers, fertilizer, and other materials used in explosives that made the news. An undercover informant reports Siddiqui was once close with Samir Khan, who became editor of the online jihadist magazine Inspire. The complaint refers to trips the pair and the informant made to a pharmacy and a nearby Home Depot to look at and buy bomb components like fertilizer, wires, and chlorine bleach. Valencias, the informant reported, frequently called Osama bin Laden a hero of hers. Warren Levinson, New York.
Israeli officials are denouncing the framework nuclear agreement reached between Iran and world powers, including the U.S. The official said Thursday that the deal would leave much of Iran's suspect nuclear infrastructure intact and did not address Iran's support in the region for hostile terrorist groups. The official spoke on condition of anonymity pending a formal statement by Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. President Obama says the framework meets all of America's core objectives, but cautions the deal is not done yet.
If we can get this done, and Iran follows through on the framework that our negotiators agreed to, we will be able to resolve one of the greatest threats to our security and to do so peacefully.
The deadline for a final accord is June 30th. The highly anticipated follow-up to the blockbuster miniseries The Bible debuts on NBC this Sunday. Bill Bumpus reports.
From executive producers Roma Downey and Mark Burnett, the series A.D. The Bible Continues will air 12 consecutive weeks. Downey, known for her role in the show Touched by an Angel, says A.D. begins with the death and resurrection of Jesus, then focuses on the first 10 chapters of the book of Acts.
We take a journey with the remaining disciples through the tumultuous times they were living in the chaos and the fear and the danger of those times. It has all the ingredients of great drama, and it has at its heartbeat the story of our faith and the birth of the early church.
Downey says despite an international and racially diverse cast represented by more than a dozen countries, the real star of A.D. is the Holy Spirit. I'm Bill Bumpus.
And the National Retail Federation has, for the first time, questioned consumers about the activities they are planning for Easter Sunday. The survey found nearly 6 in 10 plan to visit with friends and family, while half will go to church. 12.9% plan to open gifts. More than 6,000 people were surveyed. For more news and information, visit onenewsnow.com.
100 days, 100 subscribers at $7 will bring FirstAmendmentRadio.com to the minimum level necessary to sustain it through 2015. Go to support.FirstAmendmentRadio.com. $7 a month. Really, you can afford that for our Protestant First Amendment rights and the gospel of the kingdom message. Where your heart is, there will your treasure be also. Go to support.FirstAmendmentRadio.com.
You're listening to FirstAmendmentRadio.com worldwide. Freedom is never free. We need your support today at FirstAmendmentRadio.com.
Welcome back to the Investigative Journal on this April 2nd, 2015 day on our calendar. I'm your host, Greg Anthony, and you're listening to FirstAmendmentRadio.com. You can catch my show every evening at 6 p.m. to 7 p.m. That's at FirstAmendmentRadio.com. You can get a lot of my articles and shows at ArcticBeacon.com. That's ArcticBeacon.com. So go there on that long-running website that I've had for over 10 years, and you can get a lot of articles and shows from the last decade. Now, yesterday I was showing you that this monstrous New World Order, which I call the Vatican Jesuit-led New World Order, we always know that it's an old world order, but just for simplicity purposes, we'll just call it the NWO. And this monstrous elite group that's been formed around the world to basically bring us into a one-world religion, one-world order has been a subject of conversation on this show for years. And yesterday I was talking to you about this monster that's been created, and it really, the show deals with who is the creator of this monster. And I say that Dr. Frankenstein resides in Rome and is the Vatican. And there's a lot of evidence that proves that. Now, I'm going to go back and show you again many facts that prove that, going all the way back. We'll start today at the Civil War and during the time of Lincoln. But before I do that, I had a couple things on my mind that I wanted to talk about. And there's two things. And the first is I was watching a program yesterday. It was called The Vietnam War in HD. And this was, they were taking clips, actual video of what was going on in Vietnam. And one of the main topics was a hill that we were trying to take, and it was nicknamed Hamburger Hill. And the reason it was nicknamed that was because of the bloodshed and the loss of life on that hill that both the enemy and our soldiers encountered. And it made me think about that war. And I made a comment on yesterday's show that it's really interesting that we forget about it. We forget about that war because we're always involved in new ones. I mean, there's so many since that time that people growing up today look at the Vietnam War and have no idea really what it was all about. And so I'm going to spend, not today, but as I move forward from the Civil War, I'm going to spend a couple shows on that war and show you that it was a religious war, that the Vatican was instrumental in fomenting it and creating it. And so many people died, and it's very close to my heart because I was in that group of young men at the time that were being asked to fight. So we'll go back and do that. Of course, now everybody's worried about the war on terror. They always come up with a new one. And we spend a lot of time showing that what our country really is the Roman Legion for the Vatican. And if you don't believe me, just look at some of the facts I'm going to present a little bit later in the show. But the second thing that was on my mind, I'm going to spend another couple shows on this. And I'm going to do that despite many people who will call me, this basically will lead people to wonder, how far will he go in these theories, where how far will he go with conspiracy theories? Look at this nut talking about this subject. And I am sure that'll happen. But let's ask a question first. How far will you go in believing what your leaders tell you, in believing what scientists tell you, in believing what you hear on the news, without seeing it for yourself? How far really will you go? And the point I'm trying to make is, let's leave faith and God out of the equation here just for a second. How far will you go? And the point I'm trying to make is, a friend of mine who's a Christian said that she believed that what the Bible said, and that was that the earth, the sun and the moon revolve around the earth. And then I check, and I would look and say, come on, we've grown up these days. We all know that the earth is round and that we're moving at this high rate of speed. We know that. And the point I was trying to, then I started to think about it. And I said to myself, how far will I go in believing that? Do I know? Have I seen it? Have I been up above the earth to look at it, to understand it. No, I've taken everything based on science that's scientific people who've told me that, the government who's told me that, NASA, movies, etc. But I don't really know. Do I trust these people? Well, I don't trust them in many things. We did a show here many years ago, many shows on the fact that we showed that the moon landing was basically, it was a Hollywood stunt. They never went to the moon, and we had categoric evidence stating that. So, before that, I believed we went to the moon, and then I took the time to research it, and through other people who were questioning it as well, found that there's no way that we went to the moon. And so we've been lied to. Then the question becomes, wow, this Christian who's telling me this, now the Bible preaches the firmament. I believe it preaches the flat earth theory, as well as everything revolving around the sun and the moon, or the earth not moving, as the scientists tell us today. And she actually believes that. Now, she takes a lot of it from what the Word of God said, and that's pretty good authority. However, there's been a whole bunch of people since that have been commenting on it, and I said, how far will I go? Am I going to, I don't believe that there's the moon. We went to the moon. I know that Hollywood has created, they can create almost anything now, and have been doing it for years. So do I really know when I step on this earth what it really is? Then I started thinking about it, and I said, well, let me check it out a bit. Okay, people tell us the earth is round, and then at the center there's this molten core. How do we know that? I found out the deepest we've ever drilled was about 8 miles into the earth. Beyond that, we have really no real good idea of what's going on under there. So they don't know. So we know what's happening 8 miles down by drilling, and we know that man likes to dig. And so we know something about that. How high do we know? What do we know what's really up there? Well, we're shown pictures. I know that the astronauts lied about the moon. We even had footing. There was a man who came on my show who did a documentary called "Funny Thing Happened on the Way to the Moon." We didn't go, and it was done by Bart Sabrell. And what a documentary! I mean, he had footing that NASA sent him under the Freedom of Information Act by mistake, which actually showed the astronauts up above the Earth at a certain level, creating the fiction that they went to the moon by using different camera angles and different things, and it was amazing. And it proved categorically these guys were up to no good by lying to us. So then I said, well, how many other of these people lie? What about what's going on the space stations and all that? Have you ever been there? Do you know? No. You rely on it through what you're told, what scientists are told, everything that you've read. But is it true? Now, I guess the way you find out is you go up there and you look, and I guess if as a journalist, that's the only way I'm ever going to really be sure. But should I really discount what these people are saying? And then I looked into this, and there's a whole group of people called the Flat Earthers, they have societies, they have documentation. I mean, it's really interesting. And I said to myself, this is the ultimate in getting to the bottom of what's going on, isn't it? Don't you know what you're stepping on the earth? And am I crazy for even thinking about it? Well, am I crazy for thinking that we didn't go to the moon? Many people, when I try to tell people that at the coffee shop, they think I'm crazy. So imagine what they'd say if I said the earth was flat. They think I grew up in the Dark Ages. But the point I'm trying to make is when my friend who was a Christian said that, I thought she was crazy. I said, there's no way. And then I said, well, you know what? I'm being a bit hypocritical, aren't I? because I will not believe all these things regarding what the media tells us about the Vatican, what the media tells us about government conspiracies, what the media tells us, that they don't exist. I will not believe what the government tells us on 9/11. But when it comes to this subject, I believe every hook, line, and sinker. Now, to me, I said to myself, I've got to at least give this a shot and look into it. I did find out a couple interesting things. That a key figure in this is Admiral Byrd, who went to the Antarctic, and what he was doing in the 1950s, and that you need to look into. Secondly, isn't it interesting when you start researching airplane traffic and GPS? Now, GPS came into existence when 20, 30 years ago, and it was a United States military defense program put together GPS for the world. Now, isn't it interesting when you try to map, when you are in the southern hemisphere and you're flying over those oceans, planes lose GPS contact. There's no GPS signals. And they mysteriously pick them up again about, an hour before they land. And then you start looking at the way travel takes place in the southern hemisphere. I mean, all these, you can't get direct routes. It's amazing what goes on. And so I'm saying, what is going on? So you got to look into that aspect of it, and don't say you're looking at it from a view of a flat earth, because then they'll think you're crazy to begin with. But my question, before I get back into the Civil War and showing you the Vatican connections, how far will you go in believing what you've been told your whole life? And this issue is interesting. Now, let me read to you from someone who's thought about this, and it's from a website called the AtlanteanConspiracy.com. Now, I picked this out because it kind of sets a stage for the questions that you may want to ask yourself. And you may want to consider it. You may find out that, hey, it is round or it is flat. But the point is, are you going to take the word of NASA scientists, or are you going to begin looking at the possibilities of other things? Because that's what we do in everything else, don't we now? Right. So now we've been taught, now according to what I'm reading to you from this website, that the height of stupidity and naivety was when our ignorant ancestors believed the earth to be flat, and that if any man somehow still thinks the earth to be the movable center of the universe, like my Christian friend, they must be the most primitive kind of ignoramus, right? Nowadays, the label flat earther has become literally synonymous with moron. That's why when I discuss this, people will say, well, look, it's an easy way to discredit someone. But really, I'm not doing it from the point of view of whether it is flat or round. I'm doing it asking you a simple question. How far will you go in trusting authority? We know that in Christian religion, Jesus is revered, and he was the ultimate of not trusting anything that the Romans were doing. In fact, the police state of Rome during his time that he opposed was similar to what's going on today. But we have a lot of lukewarm Protestants who basically are falling in line with the Vatican because it's the thing to do now. Don't question authority. Well, anyway, if you become literal, this idea of flat earther, or my Christian friend who was looking and showing what the Bible said about the earth and the firmament, that's an interesting word too, the firmament. This common cliche derogatory term for insulting someone's intelligence. You're a moron if you even consider this. And upon seeing a book titled The Flat Earth Conspiracy, your ingrained instinct is likely to laugh, mock the messenger, and deny the very possibility, just as I thought of my friend as I'm sitting over having coffee. Now, the earth, the fact of the matter is, this person thinks everything is just as it appears. The earth is, he says, flat and motionless just as it seems. Could the sun and the moon be the same size? And all our celestial bodies that revolve around us, could that be? A stable geocentric universe, proven true by experience and experiments which reigned undisputed for thousands of years, adequately explained all earthly and celestial phenomena. How this was violently uprooted, spun around, and sent flying through infinite space by a cabal of sun-worshipping, this is what this website's saying, theoretical astronomers. Early Masonic magicians like Copernicus, Kepler, Galileo, and Newton, all along with their modern Masonic astronaut counterparts like Armstrong, Alden, and Collins, hand in hand with NASA and the World Freemasonry, have pulled off, this person says, the greatest hoax, propagated the most phenomenal lie, and perpetuated the most complete indoctrination in history. Now, I thought the moon landing was that. And I would go that far. I would say, okay, we never went to the moon. But I'd never in my life considered the fact that what I'm walking on here is what the ancients told us. So am I crazy for thinking about it? No. Will I ever will I ever go to my grave knowing for sure? Well, unless I get up there and look at it for myself, I doubt it. And I'm surely not going to believe, I guess, the authority figures after all the things that I have looked at in my life and saw that they lied to us. So why should we believe this? That's what these people are saying. Now, when you look at this, and I'm looking at the pictures of the astronauts who lied to us about the moon, well, what else could they lie about? Now, over the course of 500 years, according to the AtlanteanConspiracy.com, using everything from books, magazines, and television to computer-generated imaging, a multi-generational conspiracy has succeeded in the minds of the masses. To pick up the fixed earth, shape it into a ball, spin it in circles, and throw it around the sun. In schools, where every professor's desk is adorned with a spinning earth globe. I mean, you grow up looking at that. We are lectured on heliocentric theory of the universe, shown images of ball planets and videos of men suspended in space. The illusion created, connivingly convincing, has entranced the world's population into blindly believing a maleficent myth. The greatest cover-up of all time, NASA and Freemasonry's biggest secret, is that we are living on a plane, not a planet, that the earth is flat, stationary center of the universe. And, of course, this guy has a book coming out, or has a book called The Flat Earth Conspiracy, which exposes this deception. And so you have to look and say, okay, there's a anonymous person said, congratulations on completing your latest book. I hope you have strong arguments for taking a flat earth position. It seems quite a brave and perhaps foolhardy thing to do. I hope it's the former. One thing, if what you're saying is true, then the sphere conspiracy is a lot older than 500 years. In his etymologies, written between 615 and 630 A.D., Isidore of Seville described the earth as a sphere. According to Isidore, the world originates from motion. He divides the world into 5 zones. Excuse me. He also explains that the world has an axis. Okay, so we're going back many, many years. And the point I'm trying to make here is that, check it out. In fact, there was a video that was well done by a guy named Mark Sargent from Boulder. And he has a video, and I may put that up on my website just for you to think about. And then everybody can jump on the bandwagon and say Greg's a moron But I've been called that before, just by saying that we didn't go to the moon, and perhaps stating that the Vatican is involved in most of these wars that we're going to talk about. So I wanted to use this first half hour to talk about that, because the major, and I've seen a few interesting, this story about Admiral Byrd and when he went to Antarctica, and watching some old television shows that he was interviewed, and it's quite interesting why he went there. We think of him as going there only as a single adventurer. I mean, he was an incredible adventurer, looking for things, trying to find uncharted territory in the world, and he actually took the American military there, and did you know, right, to this day, he said in I think it was a 1953 or 54 interview, that the incredible amount of resources that exist in the southern hemisphere, in Antarctica, that are untapped, would supply the whole world forever with what we need: coal, oil, uranium, etc. But do you realize if you go up there now, there's an area that's cordoned off? Now, after he went there, there's an area that all countries agreed never to go to. And still to this day, if you started trekking, you start going through the ocean, then pretty soon it gets colder, then it gets icebergs, and then you get to, how many of us have a icebreaker that can actually get to where he went? And how many of us would actually go farther than where there's a boundary down there, which it's a military area. Countries of the world have agreed not to enter. Ask your oil companies, Chevron and all these people, why don't they go into that area if they're looking for new, minerals and things? Why don't they go there? They may give you something, it's cost prohibitive, but they're not allowed to go in there. And why? What is the reason? I mean, there must be something more going on. So there's another thing that's interesting. Now, looking at, checking Admiral Byrd. Okay, let me check the time here so we don't run out of time. Got about 40 seconds. The strange phenomenon of GPS not working and the routes in the southern hemisphere are kind of weird. Don't make sense what the airplanes are doing down there. And I'm not talking about MH370 and all this stuff. I'm talking about you go on an airline, you try to get a flight from certain points in the southern hemisphere, and it's a really weird experience. And it doesn't add up with, if you look at if you're going from one country, one city to another in certain points, you should get there a lot quicker than the way they do it. And there's got to be an answer to that. And why does GPS fall off? And these planes are not tracked during a certain period of time. Interesting questions. And I'm sure the government will give you some answers, but listen, I got to take a break. We'll be back in 3 minutes on the Investigative Journal.
Hear it first on FirstAmendmentRadio.com and FirstAmendmentRadio.net.
Visit crosstheborder.org, CROSS, crosstheborder.org, to get your print, EPUB, or PDF version of the book, The Rapture Will Be Canceled. That's crosstheborder.org.
I know you all want answers, and believe me, so do I, and I'll do my best to get them.
Despite Nicolas Cage's promise to do his best to get left behind rapture answers for us, don't hold your breath. Not everyone believes Left Behind is true prophecy. Some may even regard as conspiratorial the mainstream re-release of the Left Behind movie with actor Nicolas Cage portraying the main character as an attempt to further reinforce in the minds of all this perception of false prophecy in order to condition the masses for the play about to begin. If you want true Bible prophecy answers, get the book, The Rapture Will Be Canceled. The author exposes the Latin rapture origin, the 7-year tribulation deception, true Bible revelation of Daniel's 70 weeks, the abomination of desolation, the restrainer, America in the Revelation, the image of the beast and the mark of the beast, and the truth about God's chosen people and so much more about Bible prophecy. This book will shatter the left-behind paradigm of future events. Get the book, The Rapture Will Be Canceled. Visit crosstheborder.org, CROSS, crosstheborder.org, to get your print, EPUB, or PDF version of the book, The Rapture Will Be Canceled. That's crosstheborder.org.
Since the beginning of time, kings have sought it, nations have fought for it. It has been traded, it has been borrowed, it has been purchased, it has been stolen. There's a reason for it. To secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves and to our posterity, invest with the security of gold and silver. Call Discount Gold and Silver Trading at 1-800-375-4188 or visit discountgoldandsilvertrading.net. Listen to Financial Survival with your host, Melody Cedarstrom, right here on FirstAmendmentRadio.com at 4 p.m. Eastern or 1 p.m. Pacific Time. Visit DiscountGoldandSilverTrading.net or call Discount Gold and Silver Trading at 1-800-375-4188. Toll free, 1-800-375-4188.
Okay, we're back on the Investigative Journal on this April 2nd, 2015 day in our calendar. And if you listen to the first half hour, I was presenting a theory which is looked at by many as absurd, called the Flat Earth Theory. And I wanted to tell you this. I really bring this up not because I know whether the earth is round or it's flat. I know it only because of what I'm told and what I see, what I hear, and who I believe. And then the next question becomes, how far will you go in believing authority figures that have been proven to lie to you about many other things, many other things? And no one knows that better than me because I happen to live in Rome, so I saw it coming from a religious standpoint and a secular standpoint. And the point I'm trying to make is there are people that believe everything they say. So it goes from the gamut of they believe everything that comes out of the mouth of the Pope, that comes out of the mouth of the president, whether they agree with him or not. You know, then they'll play the left-right game and say, well, we can get a Republican president and things will be better. But it always seems to get worse no matter what you have. Then you have people that have stages of non-belief in secular affairs and in religious affairs, and they'll believe certain things but not others. And then you get to a point where people don't believe anything that comes out of their mouths, including the earth. The theory that the earth is round. Now, the point I'm trying to make is, I want to know, is there anybody that you know, that you can trust, that's been underneath the earth farther than 8 miles? Drill bits can't go any farther. And do you know anybody that's been up? I'm not talking about a NASA, astronaut or anything. Do you know somebody like your next door neighbor who you'd really trust, that's been into space, that can look at this and understand everything? And then there's the gravity point we have to discuss and many things. But the point is, even with the theory of the round earth, you go on what people have told you, and then basically what happens is, what I thought the greatest conspiracy regarding space was the moon landings. And I was skeptical when I first started researching that, but I firmly believe there's so many facts that show you we never went to the moon, that if they can lie about that, maybe they can lie about this. I really present it with that in mind. The theory is, don't trust these religious leaders in the Vatican, and don't trust these high-level government officials. That's the point. And how far are you going to go in believing them? So when you listen to a person that talks about these things, check some of the facts out. And then, like I said, I'm looking for somebody. I once did a story about It was Charles Hall. It was called The Tall Whites, and what a story about his encounter with the supposed alien tall whites. And I did that years ago. And it's really one of the only stories I ever did on aliens, outside of, commenting on a number of things, stories that have come out, but only really in-depth thing I did about it. And it's similar. The thought process to me is similar. Are you going to believe what you're told, or are you going to know for sure? And the point is, look at both sides of the story. Okay, so those of you who want to call me a moron for bringing this up, go right ahead. Those of you who want to look into it further, tell me what you find out. But anyway, we're going to get back, because I don't believe a thing that comes out of the Pope's mouth or the thing that comes out of Washington. That's for sure. I'm not saying that some of the things they say aren't true, but you got to check all out. Now, we've gone back, and I've tried to show you that the Vatican's involvement in this country has been long and storied and brutal and evil. And if you look, I've talked about their conspiracy in the assassination of Abraham Lincoln. But let's look at some of the books that you can still find maybe, and this may help you research it yourself. Because I've gone through the theories, and I'm going to refer to a gentleman here who's put this together on ForbiddenKnowledge.com, and he says, look at this. Look at Thomas M. Harris, late Brigadier General USV and a presiding judge over the trial of the conspirators. And he wrote The Assassination of Abraham Lincoln, pinning it on the Vatican. Also by Thomas M. Harris, Behind the Purple Curtain. The Great Conspiracy, The Suppressed Truth About the Assassination of Abraham Lincoln. I've referred to that book many times, and I have it right in front of me, by Burke McCarty. It's a book written in the 1920s. She was a woman who had to change her name just so she wouldn't get killed for writing it. And, of course, there's 50 Years in the Church of Rome by Charles Chiniquy, ex-Catholic priest. Then there's Treason History of the Order of the Sons of Liberty by Felix G. Steiger, S-T-I-D-G-E-R. You can get a replay of this show to write these down. A Washington in the Lap of Rome by Justin D. Fulton. Good book. History of the Plots and Crimes of the Great Conspiracy to Overthrow the Liberty in America by John Smith Dye. The Trial of John Surratt and this was John Surratt, hid in Catholic monasteries in Canada for 6 weeks after this assassination attempt. It wasn't a lone gunman that killed Lincoln. And he was in England for 4 weeks, became a member of the personal bodyguard to the Pope in the Vatican before eventually being extradited by the officials in Washington to D.C. to stand trial where, at the trial, it was a rigged trial, of course, full row of Jesuits paraded in file up to John Surratt at every break in the trial to shake his hand and make sure the jury saw them. He got off on a hung jury. Official records of the Union Confederate Navies, Series 2 and 3, Federal Depository Library, shows the Vatican's involvement on the side of the Confederacy. Is that book still around in there? I wonder. If not, Jesuits that listen to my show, these are the books you can take off the shelves. They'll try to get these all gone one of these days. Now, or they discredit the messenger. But anything they give you, hey, it's gospel truth. Anything that comes out of Georgetown, believe it. Right. Now, official records of the Union and Confederate navies, that should be in the Library of Congress, shows the Vatican involvement in the complicity, in the side of the Confederacy, and its complicity in the assassination of Abraham Lincoln and attempted assassination of they wanted to kill Secretary of State William Seward that night, too, and he survived. As well as their planned control of politics, education. Bill Bennett and his Jesuit brother, this is another story, Bob, they were senators from Utah, are known operatives in CIA MKUltra project. Monarch extreme trauma-induced mind control sex deviates and pedophiles. Self-professed Jesuit Secretary of Education under Reagan was shot after balking at assigning Bill Bennett as Secretary of Education. Propagator of outcome-based education stated, quote, all children should be taught by Jesuits. This is what was going on. Immigration, the Leopold Vatican Spy Network, founded in Vienna, Austria in 1828. And they're already at the time control of much of the press, which has grown to include every other mode of media communication today, including most of the alternative media. Now, Pope Pius back then wrote a letter to Jefferson Davis with the specific instructions to have it printed in the Richmond newspaper to get the Irish Catholics in the Union Army to desert. He did, and they did. 144,000 plus deserted in 1 week, based on what the Pope said. When Lincoln initiated a draft for the Union Army in New York City in 1864, what happened? Archbishop Hughes instigated the biggest race riot in American history, including the burning to the ground of a black orphanage and trampling to death of its occupants. We know the Illuminati's international bankers supplied Jeff Davis, whose Secretary of State, Judah B. Benjamin, was a House of Rothschild agent. J. Wilkes Booth, son of Liberty, Knights of the Golden Circle, Vatican organization, he was seduced to assassinate Lincoln by a woman, Ella Turner, and joined Knights of the Golden Circle for the sole purpose of obtaining their assistance to that end. Leon, and his name is Czol, G-O-S-Z, joined the Knights of the Golden Eagle and was seduced to assassinate President William McKinley by a woman, Emma Goldman, Order of the American Knights, Copperhead organizations, etc., with money through the Bank of Ontario, Montreal branch, through Jeff Davis's Canadian cabinet, which was planned in detail in the Vatican before Brigadier General Beauregard, Catholic, fired on Fort Sumter. Quote, "We have the proof that the company which had been selected and organized to murder me was led by a rabid Roman Catholic named Byrne. It was almost entirely composed of Roman Catholics. More than that, there were 2 disguised priests among them to lead and encourage them. Professor Morris, the learned inventor, it was almost entirely composed of Catholics. More than 2 of them were disguised as priests, and I'm reading that again so you get this. Among them to encourage them. Professor Morris, the learned inventor of the electric telegraphy, tells me that recently when he was in Rome, and this is a quote I'm reading to you, disguised priests among them to lead the encourage of them. Professor Morris said this, when he was in Rome, he found the proofs of that most formidable conspiracy against this country and all of its institutions. It is evident that it is to the intrigues and emissaries of the Pope we owe in great part the horrible civil war which is threatening to cover the country with blood and ruin." Quote by Abraham Lincoln. All this was in the Library of Congress, or it is in there still. Who knows? They'll try to get it out of there most likely, along with U.S. State Department records of the U.S. government breaking off diplomatic relations with the Vatican on June 30th, 1867. And which should tell you, and when was it reestablished? Ronald Reagan, January 10th, 1984. That's a long time. Reagan only authorized the raid. He only authorized the raid on Gaddafi after Gaddafi's terrorists set off bombs in Rome, even though he knew about Gaddafi's terrorism and counterfeiting activities for years. Now, remember that priest Alberto Rivera we talked about? He said that there had been over 2,000 Jesuits in U.S. government positions prior to 1980. If this is true, and all indications appear so, according to the ForbiddenKnowledge.com researcher here, there's no telling how many there are now. And I tell you, it's grown by leaps and bounds. And how much power they wield in Washington and state governments. The Jesuits actually control the entire CIA, MKUltra, Project Monarch. They know more about this stuff than anybody. Extreme trauma-induced multiple personalities, Jesuit Vatican mind control programs. These robotic victims are used as sex slaves and to deliver drugs, money, or encrypted messages to heads of state and to their drug operatives all over the world. They're also used to carry out murders. Look at Columbine. Look at what happened at Sandy Hook. All these things need to be researched, and I don't trust anything that comes out of their mouths. Now, operatives within the Project Monarch program have included people like Gerald Ford, Ronald Reagan, George Bush Jr., the Clintons, Robert C. Byrd, Alan Cranston. And notice that this crosses party lines. When it gets to these subjects, somehow they all work together. And this goes on. Yeah, I've got a list of names, maybe 150 here. Could I read them all to you? Sure. But it gets to a point where it includes the Boys Town Orphanage, the Mormon Church, Salt Lake City, Utah, Church of Scientology, all of these places. Their control of Nassau. And what about the Advocacy Committee for Human Experimentation, Survivors Mind Control? It's an organization dealing with survivor victims of these heinous Jesuit and CIA programs. It's an organization you should look into. Anytime there's an organization like this, I always worry that they control it. Now let's look at some of this. Is just recent stuff. Not recent, but going back to 1952. That, I guess, is recent. But can you imagine today the amount of money that's changing hands here and how it changes hands? But let's look at a few of the Vatican shenanigans. The Vatican bought $26.8 million in gold from the U.S. reserves at $1 an ounce. Now, when can you buy that? It's your gold. I don't think so, though. Remember, we got taken off the gold standard for this phony Federal Reserve banking system? Now, they bought it at $1 an ounce, under market value. At the time, it was $34 an ounce, and sold it back to the government at a market value $35 an ounce. Now, this was in the United Nations World Magazine, December 1952. So, look at what they're doing. You imagine what they're doing today? With 5,500 plus schools, this is, colleges and universities. Bill was educated at Jesuit Georgetown, where he and Fidel Castro were trained in communist philosophies. Jefferson Davis at St. Thomas Catholic College in Kentucky, all receiving government subsidies. Marymount College in Boca Raton, Florida, is typical. Founded in 1963 and having a student body of 350 in 1968, it received from the government $2 million in housing grants, $55,000 anti-poverty grant to study migrant children, and $10,000 education grant. And you don't think, and this was before our diplomatic relations were already cut off. Well, what's this? Were they really? No. Now, in 1965 in Mississippi, a $7 million government-sponsored program for the retraining of unemployed was run by an agency organized by the Roman Catholic Diocese. The $7 million was financed by the government via the Hilberton Act. From 1947 to 1964, 7,372 such projects were approved under the Hilberton Act, HUD condemning public lands and giving it to the Catholic Church. This was rampant in Chicago, folks. I know, I lived there. Along with Protestant tax money to develop the land, they built Catholic schools or hospitals. Since 1961, the Catholic Church has been receiving $83,000 plus a day for such projects. And there's supposedly a break of church and state. Now, there's an organization now on CNN called the Freedom from Religion Foundation, run by Ron Reagan. I think he's the son of Ronald, and he's a radio broadcaster. And his whole organization wants to break away from, state and church. Well, Ron, look into the Vatican. He doesn't mention them very much. All he mentions is taking the Bibles out of schools. Now, HUD condemning now they give this organization should be renamed CPA, Catholic Property Acquisition. Now, Jesuit Fordham University acquired a valuable piece of Lincoln Square in New York City for a fraction of its worth, then got federal aid to develop the property. Man, I got to form a religion like this. Manhattan College, famous for its wines and brandy, obtained a large factory and financial assistance from New York's Dormitory Authority. In Chicago, HUD donated a 60-acre. They donate $4.5 million tract at the Heinz Veterans Administration Hospital to Jesuit Loyola University. When VA General Counsel, and we have all these veterans that aren't getting taken care of, but we can give the Vatican $4.5 million tract of land. And what do they do with it? We don't appear to help our veterans coming back. Well, they instigate the wars, and they kill all these people and get them killed anyway, so why should they care for them when they come back? Now, when VA General Councilman Fred B. Rhodes balked at the giveaway, a devout Catholic replaced him. New York State banking record shows us that in 1962, the Catholic Church owned stocks and bonds in hundreds of corporations. Among others, Baltimore and Ohio Railroad, Rock Island, Erie, Seaboard, Missouri Pacific, Pierre Marquette, Goodyear Tire and Rubber, Firestone, Fisk, U.S. American Smelting, Commonwealth Edison Hotel Company, Squire Building, Pacific Gas and Electric, West Penn Power, American Commonwealth Power, Texas Electric, Atlantic City Convention Hall, Louisiana Hotel Company, Squire Building, Brooklyn Edison, Lane Bryant, Fox Playhouses, Fox Theater, in St. Louis, Denver Joint Stockland Bank, Savoy Plaza Hotel. Boy, these guys, they know how to invest your money. National Daily, Thurman Washington Silk, Pillsbury Flour, Yankee Stadium. They got, General Motors, General Electric, Shell Oil, Bethlehem Steel, Gulf Oil, IBM, Boeing, Lockheed, Douglas, Curtiss Wright, Phillips Oil, Creole Petroleum Company, and all tax-free. Whew. What a game they got going, huh? And then you say they don't have any involvement in our country, and our courts will say they don't do business here. What a crock. And, it's even getting worse today. And this is going back with records that are 30 to 40 years old. Can you imagine what they are today? It's amazing. I only got 4 minutes. I could keep reading what their holdings are in the country for 10 years probably. And we're just talking the tip of the iceberg. In Massachusetts alone, it's hard to distinguish between Catholic Church and the state government. Every time a public school closes, the Catholic Church buys it for $1. Catholic Church never loses a sealed bid on a public land auction. This is done via an open and devious bypassing of the U.S. Constitution by the hidden Catholic pressure groups within the U.S. government, state and local, by the legal, semi-legal, and dubious political financial manipulations of sly Catholic dealers relentlessly operating in the legislative, financial, and real estate fields on behalf of the Vatican Catholic Church. At one time, the Catholic Church owned more land area than the entire state of Connecticut. The Catholic Church has been buying land and constructing buildings in New York City at a rate second only to the city itself. And it's been proven they're the second biggest landholder in New York. This is all tax exempt. Care to take a guess why New York City went bankrupt twice when Mr. Bush was in the White House? And all thanks to Cardinal Francis, Spelly's War, Vietnam, Spellman. Read, there's a book called The Vatican Billions by Avro Manhattan. We've forgotten about him, but I'm going to refer to him in a book he wrote about Vietnam when I start talking about the Vietnam War. And I was there during this big, huge scandal in Rome in the 80s, know about the Pope's banker, Michael Sindona, and being sent to federal prison in New York State for causing the default of Franklin National Bank, etc. It appears he was not only the Pope's banker, but also the banker for the Vatican. This guy, listen, I learned all about the Italian Masonic Lodge, the P2 Lodge, Vatican connections, the Vatican political party, the mafia connections in Sicily, Cosa Nostra, and the deaths of bankers, including Roberto Calvi. He set up this. Sindona was involved, in all likelihood, set up a program of $900 million in counterfeit bonds for the Vatican to be pushed into the country. When it was discovered that the Vatican Bank and Cardinal Tisserand, second only to the Pope, were the main offenders, and an investigation was to follow, Tisserand conveniently died, requesting before his death that his diaries be removed from the Vatican. That's just the tip of the iceberg. And we can continue tomorrow with more. And get into, some of the things that go on in this country. But if you don't think there's a double standard, if you don't think they get away, they don't pay taxes here. They buy land and the dollar and they buy land from the government. They work together with the government at the federal, the state, the county, at every level. And we like it. You know what? That thing I said, you can show all this stuff to people, but you know what? They're happy with this deception. They love it because they just believe everything that comes out of Rome's, they believe everything the Pope says. And what a mistake. Now, we're all out of time. We'll see you tomorrow on the Investigative Journal.
Gold and silver is tremendously undervalued. Global demand vastly exceeds mine supply by more than 60% annually. There is little in the financial world more certain than a coming explosion in the prices of gold and silver. The U.S. dollar continues to lose value and respect as the world's reserve currency. Our nation faces challenges on many fronts, and a day doesn't pass without another economist bringing forth warnings of impending economic calamity. There has never been a better time than right now to acquire physical gold and silver. Discount Gold and Silver Trading was founded on the principles of truth and honesty. We believe in providing a quality product, quality service, and most importantly, competitive pricing. We provide all forms of precious metals, including American gold, silver, platinum, and rare investment and circulated coins. Silver bars, rounds, and 90% silver bags are on hand for the silver investor. Gold self-directed IRAs are available. Call Discount Gold and Silver Trading at 1-800-375-4188. Toll free, that's 1-800-375-4188.
American Family News, I'm Chris Woodward. The U.S. and Iran are both hailing the framework that was agreed to Thursday in Switzerland by negotiators working toward a deal to limit Iran's nuclear program. The negotiators from the nations involved in the talks, including Russia and China, will now start writing the text of a final accord. Iran will still be allowed to maintain significant elements of a program that could be used to make either energy or nuclear weapons, but President Obama says a final accord will, quote, make our country, our allies, and our world safer.
It is a good deal. This framework would cut off every pathway that Iran could take to develop a nuclear weapon.
The deadline for a final accord is June 30th. A tablet computer that was found at the home of Germanwings co-pilot Andreas Lubitz is offering the first evidence that he may have planned ahead of time to fly the plane into a mountain last week. Authorities say his recent searches on the tablet dealt with suicide methods and, in one case, with cockpit doors and security. A Kansas abortionist is being sued, but this time not for an abortion.
He is Herbert Hodez, who, along with his daughter, Tracy Nauser, operate the Center for Women's Health in Overland Park. When Kansas passed an abortion clinic standards law, he filed suit. Cheryl Sullinger of Operation Rescue tells AFN he's no stranger to a courtroom.
He's actually been sued about 14 times, and he's never actually been disciplined by the medical board, but that may be because women generally are not aware that they can file complaints with the medical board.
But with documentation in hand, they can with a call or by visiting the website of the Kansas